Now that the Sony ZV-E10m2, they need to get a better name, is out, has that made the original version obsolete? Or would you be better off to maybe go with this since you can find it for around $500 now, which is only half the price of this new model? So let's take a look at the different features you get on the new model versus the old to see, should you invest in this Mark II, or is the original ZV-E10 still good enough to give you high quality videos? The first thing you'll notice when looking at these cameras is that the Mark II is noticeably larger than the original version. There's multiple reasons for that. The first reason is the memory card placement. So originally we just had a normal UHS 1 memory card slot down here next to the battery on the Mark I version. And then here on the new version, it's moved from the battery slot over to the side here. And it's a UHS 2 because we have a lot higher bit rates available, which we'll cover when we go over the actual internal specs of the camera. And you still have all the same USB, HDMI, headphone, and microphone ports on the side of both cameras. But the reason that got moved to the side is because the original camera here, it has a smaller hand grip, which I wasn't really a fan of. I don't like cameras that are this small. That's something I did like about the equivalent Canon cameras to this, was that it just felt better to hold because you had a better grip, which the Mark II fixes. This battery is quite small. I remember my A7S Mark II used these tiny batteries, and I had like 8 of them that I would keep with me because they would run out so quickly. And with the high bit rates that these cameras have, it's kind of the same deal. But they have switched it to the full-size ones that all the main full-frame Sony cameras use this large battery. So it is now in this smaller camera as well. And so you have a lot better battery life, and that gives you a better grip and makes this camera just the right size. I just feel more stable with it when my hand can wrap all the way around the grip versus this where it's just kind of, it just feels weird. This is a lot better. And I like the feel of the texture on the grip on the new version versus the original. And the other main thing you'll notice on the cameras is that there is a button on the top here that you push to go from photo to video to the S&Q modes. And it works fine, but what I like better on the new one is it's a toggle switch, so you can switch left, right, and center for photo, S&Q, and then in the center is video. And the reason I like that is because you can easily look at it and know what mode the camera's in, versus this, you're having to click through and make sure you're on the setting that you want, because I thought at one point that I was in video mode, and when I pressed record it said you need to be in video mode for that, and realized I was in the photo mode. Other than that, it has all the same customizable buttons on both of the cameras. So let me know in the comments, what do you like better in a camera? Do you like the smallest body as possible where it doesn't really matter about the handle? Because in reality, you're probably using a gimbal, you're probably using a monopod, tripod in most cases. You're not just gonna be holding it. Even if you're vlogging, you're probably gonna be holding a GorillaPod, so it may not matter that much. But if you are doing some hand holding and just grabbing the camera in general, I just like the feel of a bigger camera. Smaller is not always the best. If you're traveling, yeah, cutting down weight is important, but just feeling secure is really important to me. So let me know what you like down in the comments. But when it comes to the internal specs, with the original camera here, we had 4K up to 30 frames per second, so 24 and 30. But with the Mark II, you've got 4K up to 60 frames per second. So we have the same 24, 30, and 60 frames per second. Now that 60 frames per second does come with a slight 1.1 times crop, which really isn't a big deal. It's barely even noticeable. What you will notice more is if you go into the active stabilization mode, it crops in quite noticeably. So if you are doing some hand holding, that's worth it, but you have to realize that whatever lens you're using, you're probably gonna want a wider lens because it's gonna crop in quite a bit. Otherwise, just make sure you're using a tripod, monopod, something like this. With the original, you're limited to just the compression mode of XAVC-S, versus the new one, you have all the options of all the big full frame cameras with XAVC-S, along with HS, along with SI, and with that comes much higher bit rates, getting all the way up to those 600 megabits per second, which is why you need that UHS 2 slot that can read the card there. And along with those video recording modes, the original ZV-E10 only had the 420 8-bit, whereas with this you have the option of 422 10-bit, 420 10-bit, and I think 420 8-bit. And I know that can sound confusing. We're talking about all this compression modes of XAVC-S versus SI, 10-bit, 422 color sampling. I have videos on all these topics. I'll have them linked below so you can check them out. Really, most of that isn't gonna matter a whole lot to you. If you're starting out getting one of these as a beginner filmmaker, that comes into play when you get into color grading using things like log shooting, picture profiles, S-Log, and you're having to do a lot of this grading yourself. It gives you a lot more options with colors and being able to push them and how much you can color grade the footage before it starts falling apart. But for most people starting out, just shooting in a standard picture profile, even on this, you're gonna get really good results as long as you learn how to expose properly, you have a good lens. I actually have a video on footage for this camera that you can check out and see what's possible with this if you use it with a good lens, as well as this one, and you'll see that the video quality is going to be very similar between the two of them once you learn how to use light, expose, and frame things properly. One of the big problems with footage on the original version is the rolling shutter, and that's where if you're moving the camera quickly from left to right or something's moving quickly across the frame, you can start to get a jello-like effect from it, from things that are straight up and down, and it just warps the whole image. So if you want to move really quickly, everything's going to kind of bend as you do it. And there's still some with the Mark II version, but they have improved on it a lot. And definitely, if you're going to be doing quick camera movements or playing that type of thing, a camera like this will come in handy because it will be noticeable with the original version. And there are a whole lot of features that the cameras both have, and I'm not going to go over everything, just the main things that stand out to me that I think matter when it comes to filmmaking. And the last one is that the new Mark II version has lens breathing compensation on. So what does that mean? When you're using a lens made for stills, which is probably the case when you're getting lenses for any of these cameras, unless you're buying cinema lenses, you're gonna have this problem. It's called lens breathing. So what happens is when you're racking focus, say, from the foreground to the background or either way, you're gonna see a little bit of a change in focal length. And it doesn't really matter when you're taking photos because they're still images. But when you are shooting a video, it's quite noticeable when you see the focal length change when you are racking focus. So what this camera has is lens breathing compensation, and this only works when you're using Sony lenses, but it automatically crops in a little bit on the image. And so as you're shifting focus, it's compensating for that and you don't get that shift in focal length. So it crops a little bit, but that keeps from getting that effect of the image expanding and shrinking when you're racking focus. So with all those main feature differences, is the Mark II better than the original? Of course it's better. It has a lot better features that you can get, but you can still get awesome footage with this. And something to keep in mind is that if you're on a limited budget, with this only being around $500 now, you could take that extra $500 and get a good quality lens, which I have videos with ideal lenses that I would suggest for an APS-C Sony camera that's gonna get you really good quality. That gives you a lower aperture, giving you more depth of field, as well as more light getting in the camera so you can get a cleaner image. Getting a better lens is gonna have a way bigger impact on your footage than getting a better camera will. I have a whole video showing a really expensive camera with a cheap lens, and the cheap camera with a good lens beats it because the lens has a way bigger effect on the style of your shots. If getting the original means that you can invest that money in a higher quality lens, rather than getting some cheap kit lens that's gonna make your footage look bad, then I would highly suggest doing that because your video quality is really gonna be affected mostly by the lighting you use and then the lens you use, and then learning how to use framing and shaping the light is gonna make it look more professional. And I have videos on all those topics as well, so check out down in the description. I have a lot linked. You can look at the channel, lots of playlists on storytelling aspects, on lighting, on framing, behind the scenes of videos. I try to help you out by showing how I do things and cover a lot of topics that people might not think about until they run into it and then they're like, I don't know what to do here. There's a lot that goes into it. So be sure to check those out. Hit that like button if this video is helpful. Comment with whatever you want below. If you have questions, I can help you out there. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you soon.